we are in a brand new book today, and we are starting the book of Genesis. So we are back in the Old Testament, and we are starting with the very first book of the entire Bible. Today's devotion is titled Two Trees, and if you've gotten the hang of this podcast, you know that all you have to do is look at the title of the podcast or the YouTube video to know what chapters to read before you come to listen to the devotion, if you do it that way. So if you're following along and you're trying to read through the Bible in a year, this is kind of the setup. So you know that from the title, the morning rinse is Genesis 1 through 4. This is a fantastic passage, and what a way to start the Bible. We're on day 96, and we're on April 6th, if you're following the calendar year. Now, the featured verses of today's morning rinse is Genesis 2:17, as well as chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. But from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it, you will surely die. Then the Lord said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might stretch out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. The creation story. The beginning of our beginning, the alpha of God's design. I love this, and there's some really cool insight that I am going to actually read from a sermon that I have some notes on, which are pretty exciting. But while many people may not even read the Bible, the creation story, in my opinion, is probably one of the most recognizable passages from the Bible. Most are familiar with God taking 6 days to create, followed by a day of rest. And most know the story when God formed Eve from one of Adam's ribs. And of course, we all know about the Garden of Eden. This perfect haven was home to Adam and Eve and the animals and the plant life that was there. But what often gets missed in the storytelling is the fact that there was not just one tree that was set apart in the garden. There were two. There was the tree of life, and then there was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, the latter, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, is the one that we hear most about. It's the tree that teachers talk about in Sunday school, or children's pastors preach about in children's church, and it's that tree that God told Adam and Eve to stay away from. But what about this second tree, the tree of life? This one was different. Well, we know that once someone ate from this tree, then their soul was sealed for eternity. So whatever state that they were in, that's the state that they were in for eternity. And so once someone ate from the knowledge of good and evil, then their eyes were opened to this tree. Now, both trees reeked of temptation. I believe that God's perfect plan from the beginning was to allow Adam and Eve, as well as their descendants, to stay in the Garden of Eden. But along with that plan, and due to God's loving heart, he had to give them a choice. Just like he gives us a choice in how we live our lives, he gave them a choice. You know, when they disobeyed and they ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, then their eyes were opened to the sin nature, and they had to suffer the consequences of their disobedience. So since Jesus was not yet born, then there was really no chance of being saved if they ate from the tree of life. So God had to literally remove them from the temptation. So yes, he kicked them out of their home. God is not one to remove us from fun, loving environments just to be mean. He specializes in trying to save us from something that could harm or even kill us. So of course, I would imagine they were not happy about being moved from their perfect haven to where they now had to cultivate their own food versus enjoying a pre-made garden. I'm sure they were also not pleased at having to suffer pain, such as like birthing pains were now going to hurt, natural death, and a whole lot more. But God's love for them and for us includes not just giving us consequences to help us learn to obey Him, but protection from future destruction and death, which now faced them every single day due to the tree of life. I love that this sermon or this devotion is about the two trees and kind of giving that scene of them there. Now, you know that I give you daily challenges, and daily challenges include things that we can tangibly do, things that we can internally do, things that, we can, speak out. There's all kinds of daily challenges. And so today's daily challenge to dig deeper is to look at your life and ask yourself the question of, are you living out some consequences in your life right now due to some past choices? When we're looking at those past choices, despite what they are, despite what those consequences are, do you believe that God is in your story? And I want you to pause and reflect today and ask God to show you where He is at in your story, and ask Him to give you a different perspective of His love. Is there a part of your story that is, obviously God is still writing our stories, and God is still writing what our lives are transforming into. And sometimes we are right where we are at because of past choices and consequences from, what maybe we misbehaved. And we're in that consequence right now. But sometimes, or oftentimes, we're in right where we are at because of good choices. So no matter where you're at, whether that's consequences of wrong choices or consequences of great choices, regardless, God is writing your story. And I believe that God is in your story right now. And so I want you to pause and reflect, like, where am I at right now? Like, where are my struggles at? Where are the challenges at? Where do I thrive at? Am I thriving in a certain area? And am I feeling super, super blessed right now? Which is something that, yes, we can thank God for every single moment of every day. But on the flip side, are there some miracles that I need in my life right now? God spoke the world into existence. He spoke the Garden of Eden into existence. It says in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And we read on and on about what God spoke into existence. I want you, no matter where you're at, to remember that your miracles are in your mouth, and to pause and reflect and ask God to show you where He is at in your story. The Spirit waited until the word was spoken. The Spirit waited until God said, "Let there be light." The Spirit was hovering over that world, that over the surface of the waters. And He waited until God said, "Let there be light." The Spirit is waiting for your miracle to be spoken. But what if we forfeited every single miracle that God has for our lives because we were only waiting to receive the miracle instead of calling it out into the natural? I'm encouraging you guys to speak it forth. Speak it forth using His words. Speak it into existence. And granted, I am not a prosperity person. I don't for me, don't believe in the prosperity gospel, but I do believe in the power of our words. And I believe that when we speak opposite of God's word, that we honestly let Satan control us. Just like, when we are hearing the lies of the enemy, we're letting those lies control us, just like Eve did. and she let those lies overtake her. But when, I mean, and that's basically letting Satan's voice supersede God's voice in our lives. So in essence, we let Satan, and I heard this pastor once say that when we allow for Satan's voice to supersede God's voice in our lives, even though we have consequences, we are basically letting Satan raise us. He's raising us when we listen to Satan's lies. He didn't create us. He didn't create the world. He didn't bring to pass the good things that he spoke of. He didn't say let there be light and there was no light. He said let there be light and there was light. And he created Adam and Eve. He created this world. Our lives should not necessarily be a contest of how bad our consequences are compared to someone else, especially when we need to speak faith. I know that we are living in the natural, but as today's challenge is to look at our consequences the way that we are and look at God's story. That's what Adam and Eve did. They had consequences, but yet they saw God in their story. Do you have a miracle in your life today that you are needing? Not speaking it forth and not allowing God to bring about your miracle, just like he brought about the miracle. His very first words were, let there be light. When he said that, there was light. And when we don't speak out what we are looking for in our world, we don't allow for God to bring us the miracle. God designed you to look at the problem and speak it forth. Speak something different. I mean, we are all going to have problems in our lives, just like Adam and Eve did. We all are going to have Adams, but he designed us to plant heaven on this earth. And we do it with our words, just like in Psalms. And so in today's challenge, I'm praying that the fruit of your mouth, just like yesterday I spoke about the fruit of the Spirit. Yes, we can have this fruit of the Spirit, but we also can have the fruit of the mouth. And there are thoughts inside of our minds that come out, visions and imaginations and miracles that we are believing in. And I pray that we will always rise to our thoughts of making sure that our thoughts are renewed in our mind. And that I pray that we will always rise and that our thoughts will always differentiate ourselves from the lies of the enemy. And if we speak like everyone else, then what is the purpose of the miracles that we are needing to speak into existence in our lives? I'm praying that you discover your brilliance today and that you discover that by remembering that as we go through Genesis and as we look through this, we use the fruit of our mouth and we use the fruit of our hands and be diligent. Just like Adam and Eve had to do, we have to be diligent in that. But we also can have the fruit of the Spirit, which is our character. So speaking it forth, we have the fruit of the mouth and speaking out our miracles. So if you need a miracle in your life today, even if it's from a consequence that you had back, years ago, I want you to speak life into your life and pray that God will change the course of your life and use your story and use your life to shine forth how God is creating in you and through you more of his story. So use the fruit of your mouth to call out those miracles and help revolutionize your life. And use the fruit of your hands to be diligent in creating things that he's asking you to create and working hard. And use the Spirit, the fruit of your Spirit, to continually create in character you and what God's wanting you to do. I'm just asking that you continue to believe that God is with you in your story, and pause and reflect. And hopefully this gives you a different perspective of the beginnings of our time. And so I want you tonight, when you pull out your journal, to write, did you get a different perspective today? And think about your life, where you're at today, and think about where you want to be and use your words to bring heaven down on this earth. And I'm promising you, you'll see and feel a difference. And I'm asking you, if you know of anybody that needs a miracle in their life, even if they don't want it, I'm praying that your words could have an impact in their heart. And I just ask that you guys continue to progress forward in the book of Genesis. It's an exciting book, and we read all kinds of ups and downs and all kinds of things that, happen. But we also know that God is a God that loves us, and he gives us free choice. And so I'm just believing that today is going to inspire you and encourage you to know that God is in your story, no matter your past. And if you need a miracle, speak it out. So I hope that today encouraged you. And also, too, if you do not have my devotional, you can go to the show notes. And also, too, I love to hear your stories. I get them in messaging. People will text me once in a while, or they'll send me a message on Facebook or whatever. But I think that other people need to see your perspective and need to see your writings as well. So feel free to go through the Facebook group and write down some of the takeaways and some of the things that you have gleaned from this devotional. Until tomorrow, keep rinsing, reflecting, and repeating. God bless you.